Hi, amazing family. We have with us here a 2012 Toyota Highlander. The customer's complaint was that at night, the cooling fan comes on by itself even when the vehicle is completely switched off. At first glance, many technicians would suspect the cooling fan control module. However, after proper diagnosis, I confirmed that the fan control module is not the cause of this problem. The actual issue is coming from the engine compartment fuse and relay box. To assess the relays inside this fuse and relay box, the first thing we need to do is remove the brake master cylinder reservoir from its mounting position. Carefully slide the brake master cylinder reservoir out of its position, just like you are seeing here. Pay attention to the bottom of the reservoir. You notice that it is designed to slide in and out of a mounting slot. The brake master cylinder reservoir is secured to the vehicle's firewall with 3 bolts. After removing the reservoir out of the way, we now have enough clearance to remove the fuse and relay box cover. With the cover removed, we can clearly see the relays that are relevant to this problem. The two relays of interest here are the cooling fan main relay and the ignition relay. As I mentioned earlier, the root cause of this problem is located inside the engine compartment fuse and relay box. Specifically, the issue is with the cooling fan main relay. This relay is sending power to the cooling fan control module when it is not supposed to. The reason this happens is because an ignition signal is reaching the fan main relay even when the vehicle is switched off. Once that unintended ignition signal reaches the relay, it becomes energized and sends current to the cooling fan control module, causing the radiator fan to run unexpectedly. That is exactly where the fault is coming from. So rather than replacing the cooling fan control module or the fan motor, all we need to do is correct the source of the ignition signal supplying this relay. By changing the ignition feed to a proper ignition controlled source, the fan main relay will only operate when the ignition is actually turned on. And once that is done, the problem is completely resolved. So Amazing Family will be working with 2 main relays inside this fuse and relay box. The first one is the cooling fan main relay, which you can see right here. This relay is responsible for supplying control power to the cooling fan control module, which in turn activates the radiator fan. Under normal operation, this relay should only be energized when a proper ignition signal is present. However, in this vehicle, an abnormal ignition signal is reaching the fan main relay, and that is what's causing the cooling fan to come on by itself. So instead of replacing parts unnecessarily, our goal here is to change the source of that ignition trigger. This brings us to the second relay of interest, the ignition relay, which you can see here. The ignition relay supplies a stable ignition controlled power source to the vehicle. There is no fault in this vehicle. When the fan is acting up, the dashboard lights behave normally and there is no unintended ignition power present. This confirms that the fault is isolated to the ignition feed supplying the fan main relay. So what we will do is reroute the ignition trigger for the cooling fan main relay. The output from this ignition relay will now be used as the ignition source for the fan main relay. This ensures that the cooling fan can only operate when the ignition is truly turned on. Now watch closely as I show you how this modification is done. So, as you've seen, this modification completely fixes the problem. Amazing family, I've carried out this same repair on several Toyota Highlander models, as well as other Toyota vehicles that use this cooling fan control model, and it has proven to be a reliable solution. If you found this video helpful, stay connected with this channel. I share practical real-world fixes that help you understand and solve electrical problems in your vehicle. Please subscribe. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you again next weekend with more interesting and helpful videos. Ciao.